Welcome back to the channel. My name is Terry. Now, if you watched my last video, which was entitled 3 U-turns and a piece of cake, you will have seen me perform 3 U-turns and eat a piece of cake. But also, I had an episode of brakes squealing and then grabbing. Now, I've managed to sort the brakes out, but it wasn't a straightforward process. I'm making a couple of wrong turns along the way, and I think people might find it useful if they've got the same symptoms on a classic British motorcycle. First of all, listen to the squealing. Noise on its own is bad enough, but when the brakes start to grab and even the slightest pressure will make the rear wheel lock up, and it starts to become a safety issue and it really needs sorting out. There's one aspect of my brake setup that I've never been happy with, but it's been like that since I got the bike. You see the round adjuster knob in the centre and slightly high in the picture there. When I push the brake pedal down, that adjuster knob fouls on part of the frame, and in fouling it creates a little bit of resistance against the movement of the pedal. And also it moves the adjuster knob and the whole of the lever to the left. And that must be having an effect on the way the brake works. So that's my initial theory, some kind of fouling creating a bit of resistance, and then all the brakes go on at once and some sort of lateral movement. So first thing is, let's get the brake cover plate off. All we need to do that is to remove the spacers either side of the wheel and the nuts, of course. Take out the speedometer, and that creates the space to remove the brake cover plate, which also contains the brake pads and shoes. Now I take off the brake arm, which is only held on by a couple of split pins, and remove the adjuster knob. And the plan is to use an angle grinder to turn this round knob into a square one, which would be much smaller. And after a bit of grinding and filing, the knob is now square and I can refit it, and you can see when it's in place here that there's no fouling at all now. It just slips past the frame without touching it. When I test rode the bike, no improvement at all, so it's back to the drawing board and everything out again. My next theory is about the brake cam, because when I operate the lever with my hand it's notchy. Just listen to the noise. So my next theory is that the lateral movement of the adjuster has caused the pressure on the lever, and that's made the cam put a gouge into the plate. So I take a Dremel to it and smooth it all out. And once that's done, and after a bit of filing, I put it all back together, and now the movement of the cam is really smooth. And there's no friction and there's no notchiness. And then I put it all back together and go for a ride on the bike, and guess what? It's made absolutely no difference at all. Now at this point it is possible to get slightly frustrated and downhearted, but I always remind myself that the bike is being consistent because the bike is just obeying the laws of physics. And what I've got to figure out is which particular law I'm up against. Maybe it's the law of friction, if there is such a thing. So to try and address that, everything back apart again. And now I'm using a bit of copper grease on all the moving parts. Let's see if that improves things. Well, everything back together, test ride, made no difference at all. So we can rule that out too. The next thing to look at is glazing. Glazing is when we get the shiny appearance on the brake pads, and that's caused by contamination forming a smooth film. And this makes the brakes grab because all the friction comes on at once. Now, deglazing pads is relatively straightforward. You can use a bit of sandpaper or a file, and we just gently remove all of the shiny elements and then blow them away with an airline. But if you're using an airline, remember that brake dust is not good for your lungs, so have some adequate protection. And with the pads deglazed, I put the shoes back against the brake cover plate, reassemble the bike, take it out for a test ride, and actually it works really well for about 10 miles. And then I start to get the squeak. Then I start to get the grab again. But at least we're making progress. We're on the right lines. What we've done is we've addressed the symptoms. But what's the cause? Why are they glazing in the first place? And the answer to that has been staring me in the face all the time. The previous owner of the bike has painted the inside of the brake cover plate, and over time that paint has peeled, coated itself onto the brake pads, and that's causing the glazing. And for as long as that paint's there and is falling away, I'm going to have the same problem. So it's time for a bit of paint stripper. So I'll pour this onto the inside of the brake cover plate, paint it on with a brush, then go away and have a cup of tea and come back and scrape it off later. And here's the end result. You could eat your dinner off that. So I deglaze the pads again, put everything back together, go for yet another test ride, and guess what? This time it works perfectly for about 20 miles, and then we start to get the squeak again. So everything apart again. We're definitely on the right track and we're homing in on the solution, but we're not quite there yet because the pads have got themselves glazed up again. And the issue here, I think, is that the paint is oil based, and although we've removed the source of the paint by cleaning the backing plate, some of it has gone deep into the pads and we need to somehow try and get it out. Now the next bit I do not recommend. I tried it, it worked, and that's good for me. But the real answer here is to get new brake pads. But here what I'm going to try and do is an old trick. I'm going to use a gas burner and I'm going to go at the pads with the torch flame. And the theory here is that because the paint that's impregnated into the pads is oil based, then we can burn it off with the flame. So in I go, not going in too much here, but just gently working the gas burner flame over the pads, and the idea here is that any oil that's in the residue of paint which is soaked into the pads gets burned away. Once that's done, filing and then blowing and then repeating until the pads look in as good a condition as I can possibly get them. The risk here is if you go at it too much, then you might create a carbon buildup because the pads are made of an organic material. And all of that carbon being loose inside the brake drum might be as problematic as the oil that was in the paint. But my conclusion was that it was worth a try, so each brake pad had 2 cycles of burn, file and blow, and then we'll put it all back together. Let's see how it goes with a test ride. Now, I wouldn't blame you if you concluded that I'd made a real meal of this, because in getting involved in 5 or 6 test rides, it's taken quite a long time to get to the right solution. But what I would say is that if you're trying to work on something and you're not quite sure what the problem is, then it's a good procedure just to change one thing at a time. It's time consuming, but when you get to the right answer, you can absolutely rule out anything else if you've changed one thing at a time and you can be confident in the solution. So there you go folks, hope that was useful. Any questions or comments, please leave them down below and I'll do my best to respond. Thanks very much for watching, ride safe, see you on the next one.